Yo, fellas, back above 100K. That was a long 24 hours trudging through the desert and a dump down to 92K. But right before we come on, we were hoping this would happen 2 Fridays ago when we were on the show. But we went back above 100K. So happy 100K, guys. It's time to have a little party this Friday.
It's been a long time coming, man, but we're finally there.
Is this a big deal, Brandon? To you? Like, why is 100K a big deal? It's just another number.
It is just another number. And to be honest, when we broke 100K, I have a funny personal story of how I found out, which we can maybe go into. But 100K, I felt absolutely nothing. Looked at it and I was like, okay, great. It's been promised in my head already. Feel nothing. Then all the Swan fam gets on and we're in this giant video call that day and I pop open Twitter and it's just celebration. And then all of a sudden the emotions start coming in.
Yep.
And to me, that it kind of signifies what this thing is. It is a movement. It is about the people. It's about sending a message, as the Joker said. And I think that's absolutely true. And so we're doing something special here. And yeah, it's just a little line in the sand. The numbers are relevant, but it does mean that we're winning. And yeah, we should take a little victory lap on Twitter and onwards.
AP, I didn't forget. I got to say thanks to Mara for supporting the show. They're the largest public Bitcoin miner, and props to them for implementing the MicroStrategy playbook for leverage Bitcoin equity. And of course, they contribute to the security of the network, and they're one of the biggest and best miners in the space. So thanks for supporting the show. John, 100K. What does it mean to you? Is it a big deal? And if so, why? Or why not?
I mean, we're saying 100K, but right now I'm seeing 101K, which makes me think, what's the difference between 101, 102? When do people start to feel? Is at this point they're like, hey, I'm just buying below 110. And now the next, marker is 110. Steven's got a new phrase that might stick. He's a little more ambitious with what the next marker is. Steven, you want to share the new phrase?
No chill until 1 mil.
No chill till
That's
1 mil.
Man. There's no other. I don't want to hear about 110. I don't want to hear about 185. I don't want to hear about 250. None of this should exist. The next target is 1 mil. If someone asks you, hey, where's Bitcoin headed? $1 million. Big round number. Easy. That's where we're headed.
That's where we're going. Do you think that the run from 100K to 1 million will take less time than, let's say, 10K, which was like 2017, to 100K?
I think so. There's that saying in the real world that your first 100 grand is the hardest, that going from a $0 net worth to a $100,000 net worth is much harder than going from a $100,000 net worth to $1 million. And that's true. And I think it's also true with Bitcoin. Getting from 0 to 100 was the hard part. 100K to 1 million, it's going to be substantially easier.
So how much easier? Half the time? What are the odds, would you say, on $1 million Bitcoin next year, and then by 2030? So what about the odds of next year 1 million, and then by 2030?
I'll take the under on next year, although I am a true believer in that we could see 500 next year, especially if you get the strategic reserve. I mean,
that's the key. That's a requirement if you're going to go.
That's a requirement.
Yeah.
I think you get 500 next year with the reserve. I do. I really do. 1 million. I mean, I think you could see it by 2027. I'm also now a believer in like, I don't think you have a 4-year cycle bear market, 80% drop. I really don't. And, many have said this before and many have been proven wrong.
It's different this time.
Yeah, you're not supposed to say it, but I really don't see it. I think Bitcoin has crossed a fundamental chasm, and barring some sort of like economic calamity or something, I really don't think you see it. So I could see 1 mil 2027, maybe.
Yeah. Corey's always said 1 million by 2030. And I think that this year with the ETFs, the red wave,
you moved it up.
possible Bitcoin strategic reserve. It pulled it forward. I would say that there's a chance. To me, it's not just the creation of the Bitcoin strategic reserve, but the U.S. committing to accumulating more, right? So if that actually is happening, the U.S. starts dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, then that's the thing that could just launch it, because every nation state, then the game is on. If the U.S. is accumulating, you have to basically, if you know, and we're gonna show the clips of Putin, Powell, and Trump here in just a minute, but you could see if the U.S. starts accumulating, Russia has to. They very well might be already. Who knows?
And I actually think so. People talk about like the nation state game theory, but actually what I see as more relevant is if the US starts accumulating, so does JP Morgan, so does BlackRock.
Right, exactly.
It's actually the financial firms that have to get a position if this happens. And that I actually think is more material, because I mean, frankly speaking, most governments in the world, they don't have that much money in dollar denominated terms. And even a modest allocation is actually, you know, getting an allocation out of the big financial firms will be significantly larger than most countries in the world.
I think a key point here is if we're talking about $1 million Bitcoin, which I would put at max 20% chance by end of year next year. And that's if everything lines up. But the narrative has to be that gold is old and Bitcoin is the new reserve asset, right? They're not going to take new dollars and invest it in Bitcoin. They're going to rebalance out of gold, rebalance out of US treasuries. That's what I see. I think one more and that all that has to line up if we're going to get anywhere near $1 million, right? Gold has to be just totally questioned. I also think the growth of stable coins plays an interesting catalyst here. Like if that keeps going and dollars are wanting to be used all over the world and all the stablecoin issuers are buying US treasuries, and it just creates this whole power vacuum. What happens there? Unknown in my head, but I think that's a catalyst we need to keep our eye on because it's going to be very relevant in the next few years.
I think
Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash that is able to drive demand for U.S. treasuries.
I think, look, if the U.S. does start accumulating, and it just goes off from there, it basically says what Powell said is that Bitcoin is the new gold. And it's what, Bitcoiners have been saying, many Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time. And if that's the case, that completely confirms that thesis 100%. So I think you go really, really, really fast to the gold market cap. That's what it's chasing, right? And if you get up to the gold market cap, then you're going to break the $1 million Bitcoin. Yeah.
Quick comment. I think based on the Bitcoin buying U.S. treasuries, so supporting sovereign debt for the U.S., that's what something that the NSA would produce, right? Like the real lab leak confirmed.
I love it.
Look, some of you guys got into Bitcoin for freedom money, but some of us, we got into it to bolster the U.S. government's sovereign reserves. And if you don't get it, I don't have time to explain.
Yeah, the title of the white paper was a little bit of misdirection, right? It's like you got to start with this curious collectible and get people to kind of use it as to buy pizzas, and that's the bootstrap. The other thing is, cash is kind of related, or it goes back to the word cache, CACHE, which is a stockpile effectively. So you could also think about it that way. It's a peer-to-peer cash system. Anyway. John, any thoughts here on 100K future price action?
Yeah, I'm generally in the same camp as you guys. I've thought about it just slightly differently, but it's pretty similar. I've thought of gold parity by 2030. I feel pretty confident that will happen. Gold, let's call gold $18 trillion market cap. Let's call Bitcoin $2 trillion market cap. So Bitcoin has to 9x from here, 900K Bitcoin, just to match the current market cap of gold. I would bet that gold is going to continue to appreciate over time as well. I don't think gold is going to zero or going away anytime too soon. So it is a bit of a moving target, but let's just assume Bitcoin, gold stays the same. You've got a 9x from here to catch that market cap. I would put a good probability of that happening by 2030. Happening next year, agree with you guys. I don't think it's a good chance. I think everything needs to align. I think you need to see like a nation state scramble, a large institutional entity scramble to acquire Bitcoin. That's not my base case. It could happen. So I would say if there is such a thing as a 4-year cycle, $1 million Bitcoin next cycle.
Yeah, I think that's much more likely as well. But there is a scenario where the suddenly happens next year.
You're saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance. Yeah. Let's take a look at this and similar topic. Within 24 hours, 3 of the most powerful people in the world discussed Bitcoin and sort of changed Powell. In the case of Powell, changed his tune. Putin's been talking about Bitcoin favorably for quite a while now, and Trump, of course, as well. Let's watch these clips and we'll discuss.
War in the Federal Reserve itself, in terms of the system. What do you think of that idea?
I don't think that's how people think about it. I mean, it's so, people use Bitcoin as a speculative asset, right? It's like gold. It's just like gold, only it's virtual. It's digital. People are not using it as a form of payment or as a store of value. It's highly volatile. It's not a competitor for the dollar. It's really a competitor for gold. That's really how I think of it.
All right, let's hear from Putin.
Let me pause. Can we pause real quick?
Yeah. Hold on. Here we go.
What really jumped out at me real quick on that Powell comment that I didn't get the first time, I honestly, you see the loss of the attention economy there. It's almost this, what jumped out to me is almost the how profoundly uninteresting these legacy establishments are, and how material that has actually become in the modern age, where, for better or worse, nobody gives a shit what he has to say. But that's material. There's this huge loss in institutional credibility, and for some reason, this clip just screamed that.
You think Powell? No one gives a shit what Powell says.
Not in his words don't move markets or whatever, but the amount of hours that people are putting into Bitcoin podcasts, or they're so interested, they're so fascinated. The kind of dominant threads of U.S. institutions of Powell, how many people watched the Powell interview, out of interest? Sure, traders did, versus how many people watch. What a loss of mind share. I don't know. That was what leaped out to me.
That's interesting, Stephen. Yeah, I think we could probably look at that from different perspectives. I would say there's probably a chunk of people, let's call them just mainstream people, that don't care what Powell has to say, and they don't care about Bitcoin podcasts and Bitcoin. There's I think we're still talking about fringes of each. And I just think back to my former career, those people did hang on central bankers' every word. And I remember a time Bernanke, after he retired, he came in on our floor to speak to us. And there was people were seriously fanboying, standing room, everyone wanted to be near Bernanke. Oh. And I was one of the few people who, I listened to what he had to say, but if you would have asked me my honest views, I would have been this guy got basically everything wrong leading up to and during the financial crisis. Why are we fanboying over him? And obviously I went the Bitcoin route after that. But yeah, no, I think you bring up an interesting point. Loss of mind share within, I guess the question, could you elaborate what you mean? Do you think he has lost people that have now shifted to Bitcoin, or are you making a different point?
I'm not saying that exactly. And it's a good question. And I'm also just saying people obviously watch him because it moves markets. And I'm not saying people don't pay attention, but I think there's a real way that I'm reminded of this thing that Larry Fink said, where they publish their videos and they get X views. They published a thing talking about Bitcoin. They got 20X the number of views. And then I think about these big stories of the last few years in financial markets: Tesla stock, Nvidia, Bitcoin. These are these attention economy, viral, they bring in people that become very passionate and engaged. They're able to drive like a very passionate investor base. And these have been the best performing assets for 5 to 8 years. And I really see it representing like a mutation in financial markets where it's a different environment, and those investments which command attention command market cap.
That is, I mean, I think that's definitely been the case for some time now. So I think that's an accurate observation. We could probably have a fascinating discussion about what's driving that. You know, where does that lead to? Which are kind of legitimately gaining that attention versus which are not. And I think there's different answers, right? Like there's a different answer if you're talking about AMC and GameStop attracting attention versus like Bitcoin, Nvidia, Tesla. Say again?
Perfect example. That's another great example though.
Yeah.
Like,
it's financial populism, right? It's pent up energy in the system. They're upset with the financial overlords. Day to day, life's getting too expensive, so they push back. We band together and we YOLO into meme stocks, right? I think it's actually, I think there's two things going on. One, it's nihilism, and it's YOLO, which I think is the negative side here. The positive side is that we're an internet connected world, and that apes together strong, meaning that, we can actually band together and push back on the system because our aggregate buying power actually matters. And I think our ability to coordinate that buying power online is new. And if you remember in GameStop, the old guard was shitting themselves over this. First they denigrate, and then they're like, they might blow us up, and then they call the buddies at Robinhood and pull the plug. But can't pull the plug on Bitcoin as far as we can tell.
Maybe from Robinhood, but there's 1,000 other places you can buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Financial populism is interesting. I'll just say real quick, because I think the populism analogy is good in that populism can cause groups of people to actually do like some sort of positive revolution, or they can, jump to something that's really bad. And in the financial populism, I think, the meme stock is more the nihilistic type of populism. But I think there are some instances of more positive populism. Like I would throw Bitcoin, I think, in that category.
Populism gets it's like a dirty word where it's seen as like intrinsically just bad. And that's wrong. I think even in a historical context, no matter how you slice it, there are both positive and negative examples of populism. And it's a powerful force, and it's one that's rising in the world today. And most people that say that, they mean that exclusively as a bad thing. I don't mean that exclusively as a bad thing. I think there are risks. Sure, it could go good or it could go poorly, but we're living in an era of the rising power of populism in financial markets, in political markets, in Europe, in the US, and everywhere. And it's because of the failure of these legacy institutions, in actuality and in theory. I think there's a kind of like a meta level where people's just belief in them has deteriorated separate from their actualities. And then there's also like, they've actually fucked up, and the actual structure is weakening. But that was just I'm sorry to like take this on this tangent just from like this clip, but for some reason it was such an example of like this failing institution giving this talk, and it just losing something compared to the vibrancy and vitalism that I think so many of these other things have.
What struck me watching that clip is that there's this sort of desperation from the establishment to limit Bitcoin to a store of value, or as they say, a speculative store of value, which I think is a fair thing to say at this point. And saying, and it's not a competitor of the dollar because there's no one's using it for payments yet. To me, that's a win. Like it's a sign to me that we're winning, right? Money, as we know, from monetary history, it's been shown many times that it evolves from a curious collectible, speculative store of value, established store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account, right? Oh. And that's the arc that we're on with Bitcoin. And so right now, the legacy financial system and the people who run it are saying, okay, no, Bitcoin is only going to ever be used as a store of value. That's it. It's not used in medium exchange. No, it's not widely used yet. We're still in the store of value phase of the adoption of a new money, right? So when Powell says this is not a threat to the dollar, first of all, he's saying the dollar is only good for a medium exchange, right? And a unit of account, because they gave up the store value property in 1971, capitulated on that. So Bitcoin has come and is filling that position, and the chairman of the Federal Reserve is just saying that that's the case, right? And since that becomes more and more established, and we get to establish store value, which is what's happening right now, then we get to medium exchange, right? And so it's like Bitcoin can do that. It's built into the protocol, and we'll find ways to scale it for a lot of payments over time. And that effort has started. And I think by the time we get to wide demand, global demand for Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, we'll get there. So it's I see this as a big win, and they're trying to save face. But if they have any idea what's actually happening here, then they're basically saying it's over.
100%. And you even note the way they talk about it being a store of value is denigrated in a certain way. It's a speculative asset like gold. Well, what do you mean by speculative? You're saying gold is I mean, sure, in a certain sort of semantics, you can say that, but no, it is a store of value. Like billions of people around the world, hundreds of millions, billions of people rely on gold to store their wealth. That's not like an immaterial thing. And that's it. Like you nail, I think it's watching someone in this like institutional position need to lie because they're not in a strong enough position to tell the truth. Like he can't tell the truth, which even if you're like obviously I like Bitcoin, you like Bitcoin, we're biased in certain ways, we think it's going to turn out very positive, but even if you're just neutral, in my opinion, the truth would be this asset is increasingly popular. Like you're lying to say otherwise. Like that is just a true statement. This asset is increasingly popular and important. It's not a fringe speculative asset. It's new. Maybe its outcome is uncertain, but the trend is undeniable. And he can't say that. Yep. And it makes him seem weak.
Yep. Agreed. Quick pause. SC, please, guys, take 1 minute to outline how to invest in Bitcoin now. You are in the right place, SC. We can help you with that. That's Swan. Go to swan.com or look in the App Store for Swan Bitcoin. You can onboard in 2 minutes. And start buying Bitcoin. Yep. Incredibly simple process. It's the best onboarding experience in the industry. So get the app in 2 minutes, connect your bank account, and you'll be able to start buying Bitcoin. You can set up a recurring buy just to stack. Think about it like a mortgage payment or investing in an IRA, which you can also do with Bitcoin at Swan. A little bit, and keep your time horizon long. 10 years. Think about that. You're going to hold it for at least 10 years, right? And that's it. It's pretty simple. This is not a get rich quick scheme, right? It's like a Jameson Lopp, who's a Bitcoin core developer, says it's a don't get poor slowly scheme, right? So this is, just invest. This is the new money, accumulated early. It's still really early, to be honest. And Steven can talk about Swan Private. It sounds like you're asking about, getting in if you only have a little to invest. You can do that too. Minimum buy on Swan is $10. And you can get right now about 10,000 Satoshis, which is the smallest unit of Bitcoin, for $10. So that's all it takes.
SC, ping me on Twitter if you're on, Stephen Lubka. Just send me a message. I'll give you more details. But it's easy. Just click sign up, attach a bank account. You're good to go. All right. Let's look at that. Let's look at the Putin quote.
Let's do Putin.
Кто может запретить?
Here we go.
Никто. А использование других электронных средств расчета. Кто может запретить? Никто, потому что это новые технологии. И чего бы ни было, чего бы ни происходило с долларом, эти инструменты, потому что все будут стремиться к тому, чтобы снижать издержки и повышать надежность.
Yeah. So the point here is we've got two of the most powerful people in the world in terms of the global monetary system, talking positively about Bitcoin. This was within a 24-hour period. Then Trump posted this when we broke 100K. I'm not sure where that went. Yeah, it's not showing up.
It's showing up for us.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, I don't see it. Okay. Why don't you guys read it up?
Congratulations, Bitcoiners. $100,000. You're welcome. Together, we will make America great again. You know, and it's so.
This was all within 24 hours, right? Bitcoin has arrived on the global stage.
Exactly. That's the takeaway. The takeaway is just, I'll put something out there for you guys. There has never in history been an asset which became so globally significant while simultaneously being so under-owned by so many people. Literally no example. Nothing even comes close. Like, you have world governments. I mean, you already have world governments with it in their reserves. That's El Salvador. You have the US talking about it. You have all of this influence. And yet the number of people that own Bitcoin is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of 1%, like, of global population. It's unparalleled.
Absolutely agree. Just a few. That's a very good observation for sure, and that's a good indicator of how early. It's like earliness is a relative to how significant it's become. I think, or to the attractiveness of getting in it early in terms of ownership, but it's already become very significant. I think that's why people also say now might be the best time to get into Bitcoin from a risk-adjusted perspective. That's like kind of the same vein that Stevens is hitting on there. I just want to say cold things about Powell. I have to say this. So let's just stop for a second and think how amazing it is that he actually said Bitcoin is just like gold.
Yeah.
And he said Bitcoin is a competitor for gold. That is easy to think about. It's kind of been like the frog is in slowly boiling water. Like, they don't even realize how crazy it is that they just uttered that statement, because 2 years ago, 5 years ago, they never would have made that statement. There's also something just incoherent about what he said. And I think he's kind of realizing that he can't speak too openly about Bitcoin. So in the next sentence, he had to say, he said it's just like gold, competitor for gold, but then he said no one's using it as a store of value. It's like, wait a minute, that's just incoherent. And I think there is something to mention here that, he, out of all people who can't be honest, he's might be person number one about being honest. Like, he oversees the central bank of the United States, of the US dollar. And to the extent that that's a confidence game, which I would argue it is, he cannot say, why are you guys holding dollars?
Yeah.
Treasuries, that's just dollars plus
he's
a tiny
got a product.
little spread.
He's got a product to sell, man.
Yeah. But I think the fact that he even said Bitcoin is just like gold, given his stance and his own biases and limits on what he could say, is even crazier. And then I'll just end with this. Luke Groman just had a great way to say this. He tweeted, "Over the course of my career, I've found that when smart, sophisticated people say seemingly nonsensical things in their subject of expertise, it is often a signpost of cognitive dissonance between their hardwired dogma and politics versus a shifting reality they see but cannot admit yet." So I thought that was just a great way to summarize it by Groman. I think that's a lot of what's going on here.
I love that, man. And I think another way, like, let me say the exact same statement with a few substitutions. A 1.5 to $2 trillion asset is just like an $18 trillion asset. Nice. Love that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the sentence that you need to pull out from there. Bitcoin is just like gold. Amazing.
Also, think about how many statements we have in society that relate to gold. Good as gold, that place is a gold mine, golden opportunity, gold standard. And now you've got the Fed chair. Oh, that Bitcoin thing, it's just like gold.
Yeah.
It's as good as Bitcoin.
We're climbing the mountain of cope.
Sorry, Brandon, what'd you say?
I said we're climbing the mountain of cope.
Just like those cell walls. Steven, you got to head out in like 8 or 10 minutes. I know you want to talk about converts today, so maybe we get into that before you take off.
This is sorry to have to leave a little early, but this is material. So you guys have all been following the MicroStrategy story, right? I think if you're in the industry, you can't avoid it. It's been an incredible one. Saylor's been wildly successful, but there's been a really important development that's happened since. So MicroStrategy was the pioneer of this Bitcoin treasury strategy playbook. He's been selling equity. He's been selling debt, convertible bonds. These are kind of debt instruments that a lot of institutions have bought to get exposure to Bitcoin without having to buy it. And they've been very successful. But what's happened in the last 2 weeks is you've had the first other companies do the convertible strategy, Marathon and now HUD-8. These are 2 Bitcoin miners, so they're close to the industry. Marathon's now done 2 offerings, both about $1 billion. What does this signify? This signifies something incredibly important that you should all understand. And it's that there is more demand for convertible notes that are basically backed by Bitcoin than MicroStrategy is able to satisfy. Because if there was only enough demand for what MicroStrategy is doing, Mara and HUD-8, they wouldn't have been able to fill the notes. But they were able to fill the notes simultaneously and shortly after MicroStrategy filled their notes, which means all we know is more money wants to buy these things than there is available converts to buy. And that's a very bullish place to be.
Yeah, I mean, where's the threshold? Where's the limit? I mean,
I don't know.
These are mostly okay. So we've got equity buyers. We've also got bond buyers, and those bond buyers don't really have a way to get exposure to Bitcoin otherwise. That's why there's so much demand. And there's other aspects to those convertible bonds that make them very attractive, including super low interest rates, sometimes zero. So how big is the bond market in the US? How potentially big is this demand for LBEs?
I'm going to get that. Give me a sec. Let's get 51 trillion between government bonds and securities and corporate. So I mean, it's a massive number. And obviously, you're not going to capture that government bond section, but even if you pull that out, you're looking at 25 trillion outstanding. It's a massive market, and that doesn't include international. That's just US.
Okay. That's pretty large.
It's big. And so here, what's notable about this story that you might not immediately understand, bond investors are trapped, meaning there is so much money that has to buy bonds, pension strategies, bond funds, mutual funds, hedge funds. For various reasons, there's a ton of capital that does not have a free option to invest in whatever they want. They must own bonds. But bond yields and bonds have performed very poorly. They've been a kind of terrible investment in many senses. And the liabilities of these funds, whether in a pension format where there's a true liability, or just as a kind of expectation to their investors that they perform above a certain benchmark, are massive. And they're not able to meet those bars just buying treasuries or whatever have you. So this kind of new form of bond, it comes and it helps save the returns of these bond investors. And they're going to flock to it. And I think that's what we're seeing. That would be the thesis. And seeing how all of these offerings are oversubscribed and more people want them than can get them, I think it reinforces that.
This is the speculative attack to a certain extent. If you guys have read, is it Pierre Rochard on his own, or is it Pierre Rochard plus Bitstein? I forget.
It's just Pierre on that one.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just offer kind of a simplistic, but I think it's important here, observation, which is if you have an underlying asset that is going to somewhat, I don't want to say predictably, but if you're correct in your assumption that the underlying asset is going to go up in value over time, you can have a lot of securities built around it, linked to it, financial engineering, whatever you want to call it. And I'll just make what might sound like a crazy statement to start, but I think it makes the point that in 2007, all these securities linked to real estate, to housing prices as the underlying asset, if home prices in the US didn't fall the way they did, all of those securities are fine. But what happened is home prices fell on a nationwide level. So just put yourself in a situation where people are talking about these, what in hindsight were risky securities linked to the housing market in 2006, 2007, whatever. And someone says, hey, how could this go wrong? And someone might have answered, well, this could go wrong if home prices decline on a nationwide level for an extended period of time. And most people brush that away because they just said, not going to happen, hasn't happened since World War II. We've got some buffer here. They can fall a little bit, blah, blah, blah. You know, all of that got blown out of the water. But I just think it's interesting because if Bitcoin is going to be this asset that does rise significantly over time, it's not that shocking to say there's going to be some opportunities to create securities with Bitcoin as the underlying. So yeah, I don't think it's that shocking given what, you know, we all think Bitcoin is.
Yeah. It's notable. I mean, it's a massive change for these markets. It's something that, you know, does not come along often. And it represents something so deep. I mean, I think this hasn't been touched on enough. And I liked what you said, John, where like bond markets are seeking out better underlying collateral. That's a system change, right? You're effectively seeing bond markets say, hey, there's a problem with holding treasuries, which was the base collateral of the system. We want to hold Bitcoin, a different form of collateral. If that continues to happen, it's a backdoor way the system gets recollateralized by Bitcoin. Obviously, there's a lot of room it has to go there. I'm not saying that's easy or quick, but that is what's happening.
All right. Go ahead, Quinn.
No, I'm gonna take the opposite position on this one. So if you want to keep building up your castle here, please do.
Well, I'll just offer one more thing that I think is relevant. In the housing 07 GFC analogy to Bitcoin, the buffer that they actually had for something to go wrong turned out to be pretty thin. They brushed it aside because they were just like not going to decline on a nationwide level, whatever. But it turned out they did not have much buffer, that as soon as housing prices started going in the other direction, you know, tranches are getting wiped out. That AAA tranche is not so AAA anymore. Oh, you know, we know the story. If you look at Saylor, like the buffer that MicroStrategy has for something to go wrong, which I would define as the underlying collateral, the underlying asset drops in price. I mean, he has way more buffer than what these housing linked securities had in 2007. You know, people probably know the stats better than I do, but I mean, Bitcoin would have to drop by something, you know, over 50% from here for MicroStrategy for some of their securities to come into question. So in some senses, what they're doing is like smarter and more prudent than all of the real estate linked securities going into the GFC.
Agree.
Interesting.
I gotta run, guys. Thank you. Been awesome.
You'll have to listen to the recording when I counter you here right now.
That kid is running away.
Yeah, smart. You don't want any of this.
See you guys. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
brother.
So very, very relevant. I'm gonna combine the MicroStrategy stuff with the cycles. And are we hitting the top? Are we hitting the bottom? What's the catalyst? How long do we go? Did it change? So I had lunch with a fixed income guy who will not be named, just due to discretion. And we were chatting about this in Saylor strategy and whatever. And what came out of that was we were discussing how today I agree with everything we're saying. This is infinite money glitch for Saylor, and there's clearly a demand here. But what's going to happen? You know, the people who follow Saylor, of which there will be many, that's starting now. If we fast forward 6 months or a year from now, there's going to be 100, 200, 500. I don't know how many people trying to run this playbook. And the later you go in the cycle, the higher Bitcoin's price goes up, the riskier each one of those become. Okay, so they're going to take on so much debt, and they're not going to be able to do it like Saylor. They're going to have a little bit of a coupon. They're going to have to give up. They're going to have to give up something eventually as the market flips and there's too much supply of this type of product. And then they're going to buy all this Bitcoin, and they're going to buy it at 300K, and the terms aren't going to be great. And then Bitcoin's going to have a bear market, and these will be sellers. They all blow up and they puke out the asset. And so my belief is that Saylor's going to juice the cycle on the upside, and it will highly, in my mind, it's one of the key things to look out for is when the cycle ends, is when those firms, essentially the public markets don't like it anymore when new people are doing this, and then the market starts to trend down, and then those things blow up.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you said is super reasonable. I think at the end of the day, we have to remember this is a strategy to borrow, like you're borrowing the dollar and buying Bitcoin. The people who execute on that, it obviously matters at what point they do it, how expensive it is for them to get the dollars, and at what point in the cycle, price cycle, have they bought Bitcoin. I think you can't get away from that. You don't want to be the last person in this trade. You want to have some buffer. You want to say, what if Bitcoin goes down 30% the day after we decide to buy it? There probably will be some people who just think, what could go wrong? I'll just get in, and it doesn't work out well for them. To that point, I think this is a lot like mining, in the sense that people get into mining, people who get into mining early, the machines don't cost as much. You maybe have better electricity, and it's just much better for you. You get into mining late, but it's like euphoria stage, right? Everyone's like, oh, of course Bitcoin's going to go up another 50%. I'll pay 10x what the mining equipment was just going for last month. Like, this is going to be totally fine. And then a year like 2022 comes around, and then, you find out who's swimming naked, so to speak. But this does get into the 4-year cycles, Quitten, because, if you believe that another 2022 year is coming, then this matters a lot more than if the drawdowns are different. If it's just 30% drawdown and kind of, comes back up, that changes things.
Yeah, I don't think the 30%, I don't know. I keep on going back and forth on this, to be honest, but I keep finding good arguments for why the cycles are going to continue. And I think Steven's point on under-owned asset actually plays both ways. It's juice on the way up, but under-owned asset also means it's a paradigm shift. It's a technology thing. It's an arbitrage on humans being like, what even is money? It's all those things, which is, again, juice on the upside. But it also means that we have to figure out how to deal with this thing. How does it fit into the whole system? And I think people will do human things, which is they see the infinite money glitch and they take excess risk, and it blows up eventually. I don't see how we get around that. Especially if we're talking about flirting with gold. If we flirt with gold in the next 18 months, we're having a massive correction. I don't see any way around that. People don't know what this thing is yet. How are they going to hold it? Why are they going to hold it? Like, yeah, a few more every time, but I don't see it.
I could see that being the case. I mean, obviously it's happened 3 times, but I could see it being the case if it was really retail driven. If this is nation state and institutional driven for the most part, like the large chunks of money, the majority of the money is coming from large institutions, that's a lot fewer people per dollar who need to understand Bitcoin. Right. And
True.
so if you come, like, that's why I think if you have the cycle that I think we're setting up for with ETFs and MicroStrategy and Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, all of that, I think dips will be like 30% dip will start being bought up pretty quickly, because you're in competition with the United States in terms of accumulating and holding Bitcoin. That's a great opportunity. Bitcoin's 30% off. I think those get bought up. I think there's maybe much less chance this time around that there's going to be an 80% just crash. I think that's mostly retail people getting scared and selling, buying into FOMO. So we'll see. That's how I think this actually could be different. That's the fundamental difference here. that could make this cycle different. Like I said, we always say that. I was saying this last cycle, that institutions are coming, and it's going to be different this time. So we all are prone to falling prey to our optimism because we got bags and we got hopes for Bitcoin to help change the world for the better. But I do think there's some fundamental differences here that could lead to that outcome instead. And we just don't see 80% drops anymore.
I mean, are we just like overthinking this? Is the TLDR here? Look, strategy, SPAC, whatever you want to call it, is fantastic. Just don't do it at the top. Like, isn't that pretty much what we're saying?
That's exactly what we're saying. But guess what? I would be betting that people will be doing it at the top, because I don't think human nature is going to change anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
I think the best argument for no deep drawdown is that volatility is capped on the upside. And if institutions are here and they rebalance quarterly, or they take profits, or they look at it as a trade or whatever, we just don't see too many violent moves up. And then we get steady base. And then we're talking like really slow growth compared to previous cycles. And we go sideways for 6 months next year, and everyone's bored out of their mind at 120. Right. And then we go to 180 instantly. We teleport to 180 after that, or something like that. And then we chill out for a while.
There's a lot of Bitcoin being bought up by, sailors, the largest part of it, 400,000 Bitcoin that aren't going to be sold, right? That's the plan. I think, what is his liquidation price on some of these bonds? They're usually 5-year bonds. They're convertible to equity, correct?
The converts are, yes.
Yeah. So I assume he's going to be selling equity to pay off the bonds for those who don't want to convert. Is that also correct? Like, what's the plan to pay off the bonds? He says he's not selling Bitcoin.
Most of them will convert to equity because it makes sense for it. This just makes tons of economic sense for them to convert to equity.
Okay.
So yeah, if you just like net out the amount of converts that would economically convert to equity at this point in time, their debt becomes even lower.
So they're going to convert to equity and sell it?
They would convert to equity, and then now you just issued effectively more shares of equity in your company. You don't have to pay anyone back because you just gave them shares.
But if these bond buyers need cash, right? Like they need dollars, I guess you could convert and then sell.
They would, and it makes they would end up with way more cash on a net basis if they just convert.
Of course,
based on how things are looking now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And isn't Sailor's move here actually to get them to convert as soon as possible? So the debt's off the balance sheet, the bond investors, they have their capital back, and then they're going to try and jump in the next one and do it again. Right?
Yeah, I think he doesn't want to end up with a ton of debt that actually stays in the form of debt. He wants those to convert, because I think, whatever their Bitcoin pile is, whatever that's valued at, the multiple it is of the debt that is still outstanding as potential debt to be paid back. He wants that multiple to be as big as possible. If his Bitcoin is 10x the amount of debt that he might have to pay back, you can sleep pretty good at night. But if it starts shrinking, then, you just get a little bit more antsy.
Yep. It's quite the play.
Can I add some comments to Trump and Putin, or are we still hammering MicroStrategy?
No, let's circle back.
All right. So Putin's talking about like, hey guys, the demand for a neutral settlement reserve asset is going to go up over time. It's pretty much what he's saying.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely obvious.
Yep.
And as the world is, geopolitically questionable, fracturing, don't know, and we have a bunch of debt, which just makes everyone more vulnerable. I think what he's saying is black and white, obviously true, and there's massive macro tailwinds there. Honestly, it sounds like he's been on Bitcoin Twitter for a while, and we've been saying that. So good on Putin for keeping an eye on the smart Bitcoiners that'll serve him well.
Which Bitcoin Twitter alt is Putin?
Good question. In the comments, we're gonna need names here.
Yeah, which Bitcoin Twitter alt is Putin? Throw it in the chat.
Yep, we got to know
Let's
that
see
one.
it.
And Trump. Okay, come on, guys. You're welcome. That's the most Trump line of all time.
Yeah.
Whatever. He played a role in the last few months. Of course he did. But he doesn't really get to take too much credit, but I think it's in all of our best interest for him to believe that he gets credit for it, and he wants to take pride in making Bitcoin's number go up. So let's let him have this one.
I'm down for that. What's next? I've got some bullish 100K videos that we can look at. I was thinking we could do those at the end. Oh, this is an interesting one. You guys know Wicked, all right, from Twitter, and he makes these great infographics about Bitcoin. This is kind of a surprise. I knew that this was the case, and we'd always talk about like if you're out of the market for 10 days a year, but this is 2 days. You're out of the market for 2 days, the 2 biggest days of the year in Bitcoin. You're basically getting wrecked. So you can see, I can't quite read the red text against the black. Let's see, I got to make this bigger. Here we go. So if you're missing the 2 best 24-hour periods each year, that's negative 5.9%. If you're missing the best 24-hour period of returns each year, it's plus 789 because you're only missing one of the 24 hours. So you're still up 789%. If you've missed the 2 biggest 24-hour periods, you're down 5.9%. You're down. And then if you just keep holding, which is, of course, what we all recommend as Bitcoiners and at Swan, you just accumulate, and hold. At least 10 years. Just put your mindset at least 10 years. No matter what happens. 12,000%, right? So this is even more extreme than I've seen in the past.
Totally agree. If you would have asked me to guess, obviously we all know that missing whatever, the best 1 day, 2 day, 10 days, it harms you significantly. I would not have guessed that it was that it reduced it by that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, credit to Wicked for taking that and actually putting pen to paper there. With that said, people do love trying to time the market, right? If you get in after a dip, people feel good about it. So I don't think we're going to fully eliminate that human need for getting in at a good price. But hopefully if you see that chart, it'll make you just incrementally more likely to not play the trading game.
Absolutely. Follow Wicked on Twitter for more of those great infographics and charts. It's W_S_Wicked, I believe. Let's see. It's on here in the bottom left.
Yeah.
Or W_S_Bitcoin. That's kind of a really difficult handle to say. But anyway, totally worth a follow if you're not following him yet.
He's wicked smart. I think that's what the W.
My boy is wicked smart.
Wicked smart.
How about them apples? All right. Should we? Yeah, it's 1:55. Should we watch a bullish 100K video? Maybe 2.
Do you want to do just a couple quick hits, Brady, of things that maybe?
Yeah. What you got, man?
So I just thought there's just some interesting. Turdemeester posted this among other people, but the FT did an article where they literally apologized to their readers. I'll just read their quote in their own article. We're sorry if at any moment in the past 14 years you chose, based on our coverage, to not buy a thing whose number has gone up. It's nice when number goes up, and we're sorry if you misunderstood our crypto cynicism to be a declaration of support for TradFi, because we hate that too. Just weird one. Nouriel Rabini was on TV, and he's like, classic Bitcoin hater. Just said it's highly speculative. He compared it to meme stocks and SPACs. Nothing really new there. Elon Musk did tweet in response to Bukele. I think that's like somewhat noteworthy. I feel like he's been not touching Bitcoin as a topic too much, but Bukele posted how well El Salvador's Bitcoin position is doing, basically. And Musk just responded with the word impressive. So,
Nice.
we'll see if he's gravitating a little bit closer to Bitcoin. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to mention for quick hits there.
Quick reaction. The FT, that's just the best, most pure 100% free range, unadulterated cope I've ever seen. That is breathtaking. I want to put that on my wall.
Unadulterated cope.
Again,
like
we're just climbing the wall of cope, and they keep getting bigger names and they say more pathetic things. I think it's just poetic.
I think we need to make an energy drink out of that, Brandon. Unadulterated cope.
Yeah,
I think it's a brand that would work.
maybe no coin or tears. That'd be a pretty good,
no coin or tears.
pretty good brand. The thing with Elon, so Lex Friedman also said something about 100K. Elon said like awesome or nice or something underneath it, and then Lex deleted the tweet. So what's up with Elon playing cagey right now?
I don't know. He's sometimes hard to figure out his motives. Also, one other, Bitcoin 100K noteworthy thing that the New York Times did publish an article where they acknowledged Bitcoin hits 100K, but I think they regurgitated a bunch of, basically debunked claims saying it's for criminals, bad for the environment, whatever. So they're like, reluctantly admitting that the price is doing really well and still trying to sing the same tune about these other claims. But they probably feel forced to write an article that Bitcoin hit 100K, which is noteworthy in and of itself.
All right. So we've got 2,500 people watching across the channels, which is awesome. And it always ends up, of course, this is the way any live stream works, always ends up with a much higher number toward the end than in the first half. So if you like the show, next Friday, every Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, find us on YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn, and come and join us. Just, mark it on your calendar. And I would love to have you here. Or if you want to watch it afterwards, obviously recordings on YouTube. We do have a podcast, audio podcast as well, swansignalpodcast.com. So thanks for joining us today. Let's take a look at a great bullish video, 100K video. This is lots of nostalgia. Got the feels for this one, and it was done by Hurley, who's our director of content at Swan. And those of you on YouTube might know him from the Swan YouTube channel. It puts together the Pure Bitcoin Signal show, which is amazing. So let's watch what Hurley's created here.
All your models are destroyed. Bitcoin goes to the moon.
I just told people I wanted a pizza and I want to pay with Bitcoin. I want to give you Bitcoin and you give me pizza.
We have the dollar, Japan has the yen, and the internet, it has the Bitcoin.
This one time, Bitcoin went from 6 cents all the way to 36 cents, and then it crashed down to 21 cents.
I'm right here watching history be made. Bitcoin is now up to $111. It's an all-time high. It's ridiculous.
Bitcoin was created about 3 years ago, kind of flew under the radar. Now it's starting to actually gain some traction.
If you've been following the news lately, then you've probably heard of Bitcoins. What are Bitcoins?
It's just going to be very interesting to see just how much this catches on. It just sounds so silly, but maybe it's not.
Bitcoin today soaring to nearly $1,050. Should we continue to cover Bitcoin? And the answer is sadly no. So today we're having a funeral for Bitcoin.
Bitcoin at $20,000 is up $3,000 up.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
I would short it if there was an easy way to do it.
Bitcoin is going to zero. Zero.
The single coin has achieved $69,002.
I could care less what Bitcoin trades for, how it trades, why it trades. If you're stupid enough to buy it, you'll pay the price for it one day.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay. What's the second best? There is no second best. Every Bitcoin you don't buy is going to cost you $13 million, my friend. It's going up forever, Laura.
Oh, so man, good. So good. I remember very clearly that run up from 10K to 20K within like a week. It was absolutely bonkers. That's what it looks like when you're at the top of a bull market. It just goes absolutely berserk. That one dude who was like, "Oh, Bitcoin's over $100. It's crazy." That's a famous meme video. He recorded another one at 100K, the exact same words. and put them together. I don't know if you guys saw this one, but this is pretty epic. He made an appearance.
I'm right here watching history be made. Bitcoin is now up to $111. It's an all-time high, and it's continuing to rise. I've seen it break 3 times today. Went up to 110, and this is the highest that it's
ever been. It's ridiculous. Look at, we had
last trade
2 Bitcoin for $100,000 a piece.
$11 piece.
That's
amazing to me. I mean, just look at this graph.
Look at this graph.
That's the last.
This is just the last 3 minutes.
Give me a second. I'll switch it up.
What a legend! I think his screen may have been artificially inserted or something like that, but still, I love the idea because it was sticking out $100,000 for 30 seconds. I don't know if that actually works. Anyway, so good. What a legend. Anything else, gentlemen, before we sign off?
That guy, I think he looked better in the 2024 video. I think he's been getting some sunshine, getting his steps in. So
yeah, he's a Bitcoin millionaire. Like, come on, he's living the life, he's taking care of himself in true Bitcoiner fashion. I mean, it looked like he had the same exact setup in the corner of the room, with the little monitor and everything. I love it. Anyway, good stuff. I love Bitcoiners. I love going back and looking at the history. I got a little nostalgic myself at 100K and just went back to like the beginning of my Twitter timeline. I made a new Twitter account when I got into Bitcoin and just kind of like scrolled through it for 20 minutes. And it was just kind of went down memory lane. It was fantastic.
How do you even get to the beginning of your timeline?
You just search, advanced search, and then you put it a year, like a time frame, a time frame. So I just put in like a year at a time. Okay. And then you go the latest tab on the advanced search and just scroll the way down and then go up. Yeah, it's pretty fun. That's where I found that. I sent tweets to a bunch of people. I was like, oh, do you remember this? You remember this? I sent one to Brandon from Bitcoin 2019 presenting on the stage about the slime molds, right? It's like woke, or no, sorry, what was the meme? Broke, digital gold, woke, digital slime mold. Yeah, you should give the 15 to 30 second explanation of what the slime mold and the analogy there.
Yeah, I mean, the slime mold sadly is not part of the fungal kingdom anymore. We once thought it was technically something different, but it operates in a similar way. And I think most people know the slime mold because of an experiment they did where they mapped out the Tokyo subway system. And they put oat flakes, which is the slime mold's favorite food, on all the different cities. And then they released the slime mold into the petri dish. And in about 24 hours, the slime mold found all the food and then re-architected itself into essentially like a little trade network. And you look at the trade network that the slime mold made, which is just a way to find all the food efficiently. And then you look at the Tokyo subway system that the engineers made. And interestingly, the slime mold created a more efficient and more resilient subway system than the best engineers on our planet. And what does that mean? Well, in some situations, you want to have a different type of computing environment, right? Humans have a central processing unit. We try to plan it out from the central coordinator position. Slime molds are more like 1 million microorganisms in a colony, and each one of those million makes decisions in their local environment. And they can say, oh, let's go get food over here, or let's run away from that predator. And essentially the amalgamation of all those individuals is what makes up the slime molds network. And that's why it's able to compute this really hard problem, also called the traveling salesman problem. And so Bitcoin is more like the slime mold, where it's all individuals, groups, different companies, different organization, different narratives. We're all acting in our own best interest. You know, if you're a company, you're shepherding your users. If you're an individual, you're deciding when to buy and when to sell. And you add all that up, and we create this very resilient network that's hard to stop, and also, again, makes decisions in the local environment, which is a powerful defense mechanism.
It's awesome. I love all the analogies to Bitcoin. Brandon is awesome at bringing nature into Bitcoin analogies. Mycelium and mushrooms is Brandon's magnum opus. So you should check out the mycelium of money. the series. It's a fantastic read, and you'll also learn a lot about mushrooms and mycelium. After reading that, I totally got into it and went down a Paul Stamets YouTube rabbit hole, and mushrooms are incredible. I just drank some mushrooms right before the show, mushroom powder. Anyway, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Thank you, Brady. And one comment here: like all good Bitcoiners, I see the world with orange tinted glasses, and whatever chance I get, I just jam Bitcoin right into there. So
exactly. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Fantastic episode. This is the All In for Bitcoin, the All In of Bitcoin. If you guys watch the All In podcast with those four guys mixing it up, we decided to take this format into Bitcoin, and it's been a lot of fun so far. We're getting a lot of great feedback, so that's awesome. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter. If anybody really watched on LinkedIn? If you're watching on LinkedIn, you know, like more power to you. That's awesome. But you can watch. Most people are watching on YouTube and Twitter. We also have the podcast, swansignalpodcast.com, every Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to break down the news of the week, and who knows what we're gonna end up talking about. So please join us. Love to kind of keep this thing growing, and appreciate your time today. Check out Swan at swan.com, or in the app stores, search up Swan Bitcoin. The Swan app has, become absolutely amazing over the past year or two. 2 minutes to onboard. So stand next to your family and friends over the holidays, and if they're into Bitcoin or interested, you can onboard them and get them their first sats within 2 or 3 minutes. It's so simple. So check that out. Then you can do dollar cost averaging or recurring buys. You can put a Bitcoin into an IRA. We have several different IRA types that you can choose from. We've also got Swan Private. If you're looking to start accumulating on a higher level, you'll get access to a white glove service, your own rep, etc. We've got other financial products that are in the works that we're really excited about launching in 2025. So check out swan.com. We can take you through your whole Bitcoin journey from now well into the future, and you'll become Bitcoin millionaires, and it'll be an amazing future for all the Bitcoiners who are stacking now and front running these nation states and these huge institutions and companies. Bitcoin is the 7th largest asset in the world, guys. It's insane. It's just below like Apple, Microsoft, Google, a couple other big Mag 7 companies here in the US, past Saudi Aramco, and the final boss on the asset chart, global asset chart, is gold, and we're coming for you. It's happening. At this point, it feels inevitable. So congratulations on 100K Bitcoiners, all of you out there who've been holding through all these years, through these massive drops. It takes an emotional toll. You have to build a lot of conviction. That takes a lot of time. So mad respect to all of you Bitcoiners out there. You absolutely deserve this. And, we're going to continue on marching to 1 million and memeing this thing into the global reserve currency. Gentlemen, we'll sign off. Hope you both have a great weekend, and bye.
Thanks, everyone.